This is from a show we did a week or so ago, Pastor Steve, so this is kind of a follow-up question. But she's asking from that previous question, is it okay for me to accept the fact now that my daughters might not be saved before the tribulation starts, or does that make me a horrible mom and believer?
One of the problems with kids is the whole issue of free will. Mm-hmm. It's just such a bummer.
That's a problem with me too.
Yeah, I think that's the whole problem with humanity. Life would be so easy, so much easier if God just made robots, but He doesn't do that. And one of the things that I think parents need to recognize is, number one, we do have a responsibility to raise our children in the way of the Lord, right? And so there's the promise in Proverbs that if you train your child up when he's old, he won't depart from it. And so you do have that, but every kid has their own free will. And whenever I'm talking to parents that are having problems with their kids, like apparently you are, when they're having problems with their kids, I point them to Genesis chapter 3. God's our Father, and Adam and Eve were His first children, and how'd that work out? And perfect environment, perfect fellowship, everything was awesome in the garden. And they exercised their free will, and they did stupid things. And so we got the fall of mankind because of that. And so there's not a better parent than God, and God had children that rebelled, and he still has that.
And Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so on. The rest of their progeny in Genesis chapter 5. And so that's one of the things that you need to recognize. I wouldn't be satisfied with that. God's good, and He loves you, and He loves your family too. And one of the things that I've noticed about people who come to the Lord is that their families fall to Jesus also. And so I would... there's a chance, obviously, that your kids are not going to come to Jesus before the tribulation, and I understand that. But again, I wouldn't be satisfied with that. I'd be praying for them and asking God for opportunities. I would be asking God to give me wisdom on how to reach my kid. I think that a lot of times failures in the area of witnessing have to do usually with the fact that what people are trying to do is get across information instead of reaching hearts. And information's good, but just blasting somebody with information isn't necessarily going to bring people to Jesus. What you want to do is you want to reach their hearts. One of the things that you see with Jesus when He's talking to people, I always use the story about Nicodemus and then the woman at the well. In both instances, Jesus doesn't speak to the questions that they're asking or the statements that they're making. He goes after their hearts. And in the case of Nicodemus, he starts that from the very get-go. Nicodemus comes with a speech. Jesus ignores the speech and says, "You're not going to heaven unless you're born again." And then Nicodemus goes right into the conversation. And what Jesus is doing is reaching his heart, not just giving him information. And same thing with the woman at the well. He starts off, with a general conversation, and when she gets uppity, he says, "Go call your husband." And she goes, "I don't have a husband." And she goes, "Yeah, you've had 5, and the guy you're with right now isn't your husband." And she goes, "Sir, I perceive you're a prophet." And then the conversation gets really in depth from that point on. And again, what Jesus was doing was going after her heart. And, He's doing it in a little rowdy way, and I'm not saying that you necessarily need to do that. You just need wisdom from the Lord, and especially with your kids, because I don't know your situation, but you may have been a Christian for a very long time and have been talking to your kids for a while, and they can have a tendency to tune mom out. And so a new approach is something that I would be praying about. God giving me an opportunity, a door into my kids' life so that I can share the things that are the most important to me. One of the things that I've told my kids over the years is that I'm really not interested in heaven without them. I want them to be with me. one of the things that I trained my kids with was the fact that we love Jesus more than we love each other. And I'd always say to my kids, love you more than anything except for Jesus. And my kids would say that to me too. And just keeping the focus on Christ first. So, you got anything?
You know, the thing that's wonderful is that our prayers have an impact. The scripture says that, you know, the effective prayers of the righteous avail much. And so, you know, you might not see what's
Especially
going
a
on.
mom.
Pardon?
Especially a mom.
Especially a mom. And you might not see exactly what you want, but you are going to the Lord petitioning on behalf of your children. You're letting them, in other words, He loves them more than you do. Mm-hmm. And so He wants them in His kingdom even more than you do, if you can believe that. And so understand that, you know, He wants to bring those things into pass. It doesn't mean that our kids have to have us praying for them to come to Christ. A lot of us came to Christ without knowing anyone praying for us. But it's the way for you to say, God, I'm giving him to you. You know, mm-hmm. that idea, I'm dedicating my children to you daily, saying, God, please bring them to the place where they see. And then looking at your life and making sure that you have been a good example. And if you haven't, and a lot of parents have not, sometimes the hardest thing for a parent to do is to tell their children, please forgive me. I did these things wrong. I might have left a flavor in your mind and in your mouth, you know, about Jesus that is wrong. And please forgive me. He is greater than I am. He is better than I am. And letting them know in that personal way, if it's anything that I've done that has caused you to want to push away from Jesus, please forgive me. Don't ruin your destiny because of my mistakes.